The moment the red wine hit my face, time seemed to slow. The liquid soaked through my dress, warm, sticky, its scent of ripe berries and sharp alcohol filling my nose. Around me, gasps rippled through the table like distant thunder. But no one moved. No one said a word. Then came the laughter. His laughter. "Why are you always acting like such an idiot?" Daniel smirked, swirling what remained of his wine, as if he'd just delivered the punchline of a perfectly timed joke. His friends hesitated, unsure whether to laugh along or look away, before a few nervous chuckles escaped into the heavy silence. My cheeks burned, not just from the wine, but from humiliation. This was supposed to be a casual dinner, a night where I could simply be the supportive wife, smile at the right moments, laugh at the right jokes, make a good impression. Instead, I had become the entertainment. Every pair of eyes lingered on me, waiting to see what I would do next. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but I refused to let it show. Slowly, deliberately, I dabbed at my face with my napkin, careful not to tremble. Then I stood, slow, poised, and perfectly calm. "Excuse me," I said evenly, my voice steady, my expression unreadable. And then I turned on my heel and walked out, ignoring the whispers that followed me like shadows. Outside, the night air hit me like a slap, cool, sharp, grounding. I drove home in silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles ached. Daniel didn't come after me. Of course he didn't. He was too busy basking in the attention, charming his friends, brushing away their discomfort with another joke at my expense. This wasn't the first time. It had started small, sarcastic remarks in conversations, quiet jabs masked as humor. A subtle dismissal of my photography business. A mocking comment about how cute my little projects were. I had brushed it off, convinced myself that he didn't mean it, that maybe I was overreacting. But lately, his words had turned sharper, colder. And now this, a public spectacle. As I sat alone in our dimly lit kitchen, the silence pressing in from every corner, one thought pulsed steadily in my mind. Something inside me had shifted tonight. And I wasn't sure if I could ever shift it back. I asked myself the same question I always did. Was it really that bad? I hated that part of me, the part that always wanted to justify his behavior. The voice that whispered excuses in the dark, he didn't mean it. He's just stressed. Maybe I embarrassed him somehow. But tonight felt different. Tonight, something inside me had shifted. I wasn't angry, not yet. The anger would come later. What I felt now was something far more dangerous. Clarity. It was past midnight when I heard the front door open. Daniel's footsteps echoed down the hallway, slow, casual, careless. I could picture him perfectly, tie loosened, jacket slung over his shoulder, still basking in the glow of his audience, certain that he had gotten away with it. He probably expected to find me sulking in the bedroom, maybe crying, waiting for him to soothe me with that same condescending tone. "You know I was just joking, babe. Don't be so sensitive. You embarrassed yourself more by overreacting." I'd heard it all before. Every word rehearsed, every apology hollow. But tonight, there would be no argument. No begging for an apology he didn't mean. No second chances. When he stepped into the kitchen, he froze. I was sitting at the table, the soft glow of my laptop lighting my face, a pen in hand, and my notebook open. His confident smile faltered. "What are you doing?" he asked, his tone light but cautious. I looked up at him calmly. "Making a list," I said. "A list?" His brows drew together. "A list of what?" I closed the notebook gently, my movement slow, deliberate. "Of everything you've ever done to me." He let out a nervous laugh, the kind he used when he didn't know whether to be amused or afraid. "Oh, come on, Emma. Don't be dramatic." I didn't answer. Instead, I reached for my phone and turned the screen toward him. The video was already playing. Someone at the dinner party had recorded it, the red wine splashing across my face, his cruel laughter echoing through the restaurant. For a moment, Daniel's smirk returned, as if he thought this was some kind of joke. But then he heard his own voice, sharp, mocking, unmistakable, and the color drained from his face. He stepped closer, staring at the screen, the dim light reflecting off his features. His hand tightened around the edge of the counter. "What is this?" he asked, his voice low now, uncertain. "Exactly what it looks like," I said quietly. The video played on, the sound of his laughter filling the silence between us. And for the first time, I didn't look away. I watched him watch himself. And in that moment, he finally saw what I had been living with all along. I had simply wiped my face and walked away that night, but the memory still burned in my mind, the sting of the wine, the sound of his laughter, the way his friends' reactions fractured the room. Some had looked amused, others visibly uncomfortable. And someone, apparently, had decided to record it. Daniel's voice, when he spoke, carried a sharp edge, half shock, half irritation. Someone recorded it? Yes, I said evenly. And they sent it to me. His brows furrowed. Why would they do that? I met his eyes, holding his gaze without flinching. They thought I should have a copy. For the first time that night, I saw it, the flicker of fear behind his annoyance. Daniel was a man who lived off reputation. He had built his entire career on charm, on likability. He wasn't the smartest or the hardest worker, but he was the one people gravitated toward, the man everyone wanted to have drinks with, the man who made jokes at just the right moment. But this was different. Delete it, he said finally, his voice turning firm, commanding. Right now. I tilted my head slightly. Why? I asked quietly. It's just a joke, isn't it? His jaw clenched. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. You're overreacting, Emma. Nobody cares about stupid things like this. It was just a joke. I gave a small, humorless smile. A joke, I repeated softly. Tell me, Daniel, if I had done the same to you, would it still be funny? His lips pressed into a thin, hard line. He didn't answer. We both knew the truth. If the roles had been reversed, if I had humiliated him in front of his friends, thrown a drink in his face, laughed at his expense, he would have stormed out, furious. He would have called me unstable, dramatic, ridiculous. But Daniel had spent years convincing me that his cruelty was humor, and my pain was overreaction. Not anymore. Emma, come on, he said with a forced laugh, but I could see the cracks in his charm. What are you trying to do here? Punish me. You're being ridiculous. I stood slowly, picking up my notebook from the table. The pages were worn at the edges, filled with my handwriting, months of moments I had once tried to forget. Do you know what this is? I asked, tapping my fingers lightly against the cover. He scoffed. A diary of every time I pissed you off. Close, I said, my tone calm. It's a record of every insult, every lie, every time you made me feel small. I met his gaze, unflinching. I've been keeping track, Daniel. And guess what? There's a pattern. His expression flickered, first amusement, then irritation, and finally, unease. You need to stop watching those dramatic self-help videos, he muttered, forcing a smirk. But this time, his words didn't sting. This time, I could see right through him. Emma, this is insane. Is it? I asked quietly, taking a step closer. Because it wasn't insane when I sat quietly and let you treat me like an accessory to your life. It wasn't insane when you made me feel like I was lucky to have you, when it should have been the other way around. I saw it then, the moment it hit him. The realization that this wasn't another argument, another night he could smooth over with charm and shallow apologies. I wasn't just upset. I was done, Daniel exhaled, shaking his head in disbelief. Fine. You're mad, I get it. So what now? You hold this video over my head forever? I said I was sorry, he added quickly, voice tightening. You haven't actually apologized yet, I replied, calm but firm. He groaned, his patience thinning. Jesus, Emma. Fine, I'm sorry, okay. I shouldn't have done it. Can we move on now? There it was, the same empty apology I'd heard 100 times before. No remorse. No self-awareness. Just irritation that I wasn't playing my part, the forgiving wife who laughs it off and moves on. Moving on, I repeated, letting the words linger on my tongue as if testing their weight. Daniel's shoulders dropped, his body relaxing slightly. Good. That's all I'm asking. Oh no, I said softly. You misunderstood me. His brow furrowed. I meant me moving on, I continued, my voice steady. Not us. His head snapped up. What? I called a lawyer today, I said, my tone calm, deliberate. I let the words hang in the air, heavy and final. He blinked, his expression blank, as if he couldn't process the words. You're not serious. I lifted my phone again, this time showing him the screen. A list of scheduled legal consultation appointments. Very serious. His laugh was short and hollow. You're overreacting, Emma. You're not actually going to throw our marriage away over this. Our marriage? I repeated, raising a brow. You mean the one where you insult me in public? The one where you make me feel invisible in my own home? I shook my head slowly. No, Daniel. I didn't ruin our marriage. You did. I'm just finally done pretending otherwise. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the kitchen in tight, restless circles. I could see the panic creeping in, though he tried to hide it behind his frustration. Finally, he stopped and turned to face me, his eyes sharp, his tone cutting. What do you want, huh? You want me to get on my knees and beg? Is that what this is? I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in years. The man who once seemed larger than life now stood small, cornered by his own arrogance. I don't want anything from you, Daniel, I said quietly. That's the point. He laughed again, a harsh, brittle sound that didn't reach his eyes. You're being dramatic. You won't actually go through with this. But the difference this time was simple and devastating. He didn't realize I already had. I just smiled. Wait and see. Then I turned toward the hallway, but before stepping out, I glanced back over my shoulder one last time. Oh, and Daniel, I said lightly, almost conversationally. I'd think twice before laughing this off in front of your friends. You never know who else might have a copy of that video. I didn't wait for his reaction. For the first time in years, I didn't care what he had to say. I just walked away. Daniel didn't follow me, not right away. That wasn't his style. He preferred to win through patience, through control. He'd wait for me to cool down, to start doubting myself. He'd tell himself that by morning, I'd come to my senses, that I'd feel guilty or foolish, that I'd crawl back into the familiar rhythm of pretending everything was fine. But he was wrong. I barely slept that night, not from regret but from something else entirely. Peace. It was an unfamiliar kind of quiet. My thoughts still buzzed, my heart still raw, but beneath all of it lay a calm, steady certainty. For the first time in years, I knew exactly what I wanted. I was leaving him. And this time, I wouldn't let him talk me out of it. By the time I walked into the kitchen the next morning, Daniel was already there, leaning casually against the counter, a mug of coffee in hand. He looked composed, collected, like a man who believed he was back in control. His eyes tracked me as I entered, waiting for an apology, for hesitation, for something he could use. I gave him nothing. He set his mug down, the clink echoing through the silence. So, he said finally, you had your little moment. You feeling better now? I took a slow breath, keeping my voice steady. I'm not having a moment, Daniel. He scoffed, the sound sharp and dismissive. Right. You're still sticking with this ridiculous divorce talk, huh? I turned away, opening the cabinet to grab my own mug. I refused to look at him, refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing even a flicker of doubt. This was his game, he wanted me to react. To snap, to yell, to prove his favorite point, that I was the unreasonable one. So I said nothing. And when I didn't answer, his tone shifted, subtle at first, the edge of charm creeping back in, the way it always did when he realized anger wouldn't work. But this time, I wasn't falling for it. Not anymore. Emma, come on. We've been married for 8 years, Daniel said, his tone sharp with disbelief. You're seriously going to throw all of that away over one stupid night? I turned to face him, my expression calm, unreadable. I'm not throwing anything away, Daniel. You did that a long time ago. I'm just finally ready to admit it. I watched his face closely, and for the first time, I saw it, fear. It was fleeting, quickly buried beneath irritation, but it was there. You're blowing this out of proportion, he snapped, his voice rising slightly. You think anyone actually cares about that video? My friends were laughing, Emma. Nobody's taking this as seriously as you are. I leaned back against the counter, tilting my head. You sure about that? His smirk wavered. Without a word, I pulled out my phone, scrolling for a moment before holding the screen out to him. "What's this?" he asked, frowning. "Check the comment section," I said simply. The video, the same one his friend had recorded, had made its way into their private group chat. The one filled with sports bets, inside jokes, and office gossip. But this time, the tone was different. He read the messages in silence. "Man, that was rough to watch, dude. I don't think that was funny at all. Kind of messed up. Is Emma okay?" I watched his eyes dart across the screen, his grip on the phone tightening with every comment. The color drained from his face. "Why are you showing me this?" he snapped finally, his voice trembling just enough to betray him. "Because you seem to think your friends found it funny," I said evenly. "Turns out, not everyone agrees." He stared at me, jaw tight, his hands curling into fists at his sides. Daniel hated looking bad, hated being judged. His entire life revolved around perception, around being liked, admired, respected. And now, for the first time, the image he'd spent years perfecting was starting to crack. "Okay, fine," he said, his voice low and cold. "You made your point. You embarrassed me. Congratulations. Now delete the damn video, Emma." I took a slow sip of my coffee, keeping my gaze steady on him. My heartbeat was calm, my voice even. "No." His face darkened. "Excuse me. I'm not deleting it." The words hung between us, quiet but heavy, like the first roll of thunder before a storm. And for the first time, Daniel realized he was no longer the one in control. "Daniel, I'm not staying with you." He let out a humorless laugh, shaking his head. "You think you're the only one who can play games, huh? You want to go through with this, fine. But don't think for a second I'm just going to roll over and let you take everything." And there it was, the real Daniel. The charming husband, the one who cracked jokes and played the perfect gentleman at dinner parties, that was just the mask. Beneath it lived the man I had always known was there. The one who needed control. The one who couldn't stand the thought of losing it. "I built this life too," he continued, stepping closer, his voice low and dangerous. "You think you can just walk away and leave me with nothing? You'd better think twice, sweetheart." I met his gaze, refusing to show even a flicker of the unease tightening in my chest. "You're right, Daniel," I said softly. "You did build this life." For a moment, confusion crossed his face, he wasn't sure if I was conceding. Then I added, my tone like steel. "And I hope you enjoy it. Because by the time I'm done, it's all you'll have left." He frowned. "What the hell does that mean?" I didn't answer. I simply set my coffee down, picked up my bag, and walked toward the door. My steps were slow, deliberate. Before stepping out, I turned back one last time. "Oh, and Daniel," I said lightly, the same calm tone I'd used the night before. "You might want to check your bank account." And then I left. I didn't look back. He stood frozen in the kitchen, confusion and anger twisting his face, his perfect composure finally starting to crack. The first sign that Daniel was unraveling came just 2 hours later. I was sitting in a quiet cafe, sunlight spilling across the table, a warm latte in hand. The morning felt different, cleaner, lighter, like breathing fresh air after years underwater. My phone buzzed against the table. I didn't need to check to know who it was. "Daniel. What the hell did you do?" I took my time finishing my sip before unlocking the screen. Another message popped up immediately. "Emma. Answer me. Now." I smiled faintly, setting the phone back down. I wasn't going to respond. Not yet. Let him sweat. Because I already knew what he was discovering, something I'd set in motion a week earlier, back when I first started planning to leave. And this was only the beginning. I had moved half of our shared savings into a separate account under my name. Legally, I was entitled to it, I'd earned just as much as he had. The only difference was that I'd been smart enough to prepare. I'd also removed myself as a co-signer from his credit cards and frozen our joint account entirely. If Daniel wanted money, he'd have to rely on his own. And that was a problem for Daniel. Because Daniel was terrible with money. He lived like a king on payday and complained like a pauper by the end of the month. Lavish dinners, designer watches, impulsive gadget purchases, he spent freely to maintain the illusion of success. His life was a performance, every expensive gesture meant to remind the world how well he was doing. Now, for the first time, he'd have to face what life looked like without me smoothing over the chaos he left behind. My phone buzzed again. Daniel, you took our money. Are you insane? Daniel, I swear to God, Emma. Fix this. Now. I exhaled slowly, a quiet satisfaction blooming in my chest. It was our money when I took half, but when he blew thousands on meaningless nonsense, that was just Daniel being Daniel. Typical. But the next blow hit him harder than any financial one ever could. It started that afternoon, with a call from my friend Mia. Her voice came through the line, quick and breathless. Emma, please tell me you've seen it. Seen what? I asked, though I already had a sinking feeling I knew. The post, she said. I opened the group chat Mia, and I shared with a few mutual friends. The moment I saw the screenshot, my breath caught. Daniel's boss had posted something on LinkedIn. It didn't name names, but it didn't have to. A man who can't respect his wife in private won't respect anyone in business either. Actions have consequences. I stared at the words, the weight of them sinking in. Daniel's boss had been at that dinner party. He hadn't laughed that night, and apparently, he hadn't forgotten either. The comments beneath the post told the rest of the story. Wow. People really show their true colors sometimes. Humiliating your own wife in public. Yikes. Glad I know who not to work with. Daniel had built his entire career on being likable, the easygoing guy, the charming colleague, the man everyone trusted. But now the mask was slipping. And the world was finally seeing Daniel the way I always had. ChatGPT said. He wasn't the best at what he did, but Daniel didn't need to be. What he lacked in skill, he made up for in charm. He knew people, how to make them laugh, how to make them feel important. He was the guy everyone invited out for drinks after work, the one who always seemed to know the right thing to say. But that charm was cracking now. Because once you expose someone for who they truly are, the people who once admired them start to see the truth. And Daniel, my Daniel, was finally being exposed. I was still scrolling through the fallout online when my phone began to ring. His name flashed across the screen. I let it ring until it stopped, and a moment later, the voicemail icon appeared. I slipped in my earbuds and hit play. Emma, what the hell is going on? My boss won't return my calls. People are treating me like I'm some kind of monster, because of you. His voice shook with barely contained anger. This is beyond petty, Emma. It's cruel. You're ruining my life over a damn joke. There was a pause, then his tone shifted, softening into something almost pleading. Come on, babe. I didn't mean it like that, you know that. I closed my eyes. I knew that tone all too well. The switch from fury to pity. From rage to guilt. It was his favorite trick, manipulation disguised as remorse. But I wasn't falling for it. Not this time. By evening, the messages had changed again. Daniel, let's talk. Just us. No fighting. Please. I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. Me, fine. Meet me at the house in an hour. I grabbed my bag and headed out. When I arrived, Daniel was already there pacing the living room. He looked exhausted, angry, but desperate to hide it. The moment he saw me, he exhaled sharply. Okay, he said. Let's be adults about this. Let's talk like normal people. I folded my arms. Go ahead. He rubbed the back of his neck, frustration bleeding through his forced calm. Look, I was an ass. I admit that. I was drunk, it was a stupid joke, but I didn't mean to hurt you. I raised an eyebrow. You weren't drunk, Daniel. You had half a glass of wine. His jaw twitched. Fine. Whatever. The point is, I messed up. But you're going nuclear here. You froze the accounts, turned people against me. What do you want, Emma? Revenge? I let the silence stretch between us, the weight of his words hanging in the air. He still didn't get it. This wasn't about revenge. It was about finally being free. I sighed, tilting my head slightly. No, Daniel, I said quietly but firmly. I just want to be done. His expression darkened, that familiar flash of anger flickering behind his eyes. So that's it, he demanded, his voice sharp. You're walking away, just like that. Just like that, I replied. For a moment, something shifted in his face. The arrogance faltered, replaced by something almost foreign on him, confusion. Maybe even fear. It was as if, for the first time, he realized he wasn't winning this one. What am I supposed to do, Emma? He asked, his voice unsteady now. I gave a small shrug. Figure it out. You always said I was the problem, now you get to see what life looks like without me. His face hardened, the vulnerability gone in an instant. You're going to regret this. I gave him a faint smile. No, Daniel. You are. Then I turned and walked toward the door, feeling the weight of years, the manipulation, the fear, the pretending, slide off my shoulders with every step. Just before stepping outside, I paused and said one last thing, not bothering to look back. Oh, and by the way, I said lightly. You might want to check your email. And then I left. Daniel stood alone in the house he once controlled, surrounded by silence, and the storm he never saw coming was about to hit him full force. I could picture it perfectly, the way his face would tighten as he opened his inbox, his brows furrowing as he read the subject line, then the panic rising as he skimmed through the message, rereading it in disbelief. The way he'd rush to his laptop, typing frantically, hoping what he was seeing wasn't real. But it was. By the time I reached my apartment, the one I had quietly leased 2 months earlier, back when I first started planning my escape, my phone was already buzzing. Daniel. I ignored it. Another call. Then another. By the time he left a voicemail, I was already pouring myself a glass of wine, sinking into my new life with a peace I hadn't felt in years. I pressed play. Emma, his voice cracked with anger, trembling between fury and disbelief. You're out of your damn mind. What the hell did you do? I took a slow sip, letting the wine roll across my tongue before smiling to myself. Let's see how he handled this. The email he'd just seen, the one I had sent, wasn't to him. It was to his company's HR department. Attached to it was the video from the dinner party. A clear, undeniable display of verbal and emotional abuse. In public. And this time, there was no charm, no laughter, no excuses that could save him. I didn't have to say much, just a simple professional message. I am reaching out to formally report my soon-to-be ex-husband, Daniel Marks, for repeated patterns of verbal and emotional abuse, as demonstrated in the attached footage. This is only one instance, but it reflects an ongoing issue that has impacted both his personal and professional reputation. Given your company's stated values, I felt it was important that this behavior be acknowledged. That was all. Precise. Polite. Devastating. I knew exactly what I was doing. Daniel worked for a company that prided itself on corporate ethics and leadership accountability. They held seminars about workplace respect, diversity, and inclusion. They had entire policies dedicated to integrity and image management. Their HR department treated public scandals like landmines, and now, they had a live one sitting in their inbox. There was no charming his way out of this. No grin, no quick joke, no carefully worded apology that could undo what he'd done on camera. My phone rang again. His name lit up the screen. This time, I answered. Emma, his voice came through ragged, the panic unmistakable. Gone was the calm, confident Daniel, the man who always believed he was in control. You sent that email. Are you serious? Do you have any idea what you've done? I let a small pause stretch between us before answering, my tone calm and deliberate. I know exactly what I've done, Daniel. I made sure they saw you for who you really are. God, Emma, this is my career, he snapped, his voice breaking. What the hell is wrong with you? I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly, almost serenely. Oh, now it matters, I said softly. Now you care about consequences. Funny, because when I was sitting there, drenched in wine, listening to you laugh with your friends, you didn't seem too concerned about my reputation. That was different. No, I cut in sharply. It wasn't. For a moment, all I could hear was his breathing, short, uneven, trembling with frustration and disbelief. Look, he tried again, his voice cracking. We don't have to do this. You're mad, I get it, but... I smiled faintly, not because any of this amused me, but because I finally recognized something in his voice I'd never heard before. Fear. You're right, we can fix this, he pleaded, voice taut with that old, polished urgency. Just tell them it was a misunderstanding. Say you overreacted. We can make this go away. I almost laughed. Even now he thought I could be persuaded. Even now he believed I could be managed. You still don't get it, do you? I said softly. I don't want to fix this, Daniel. I want you to feel what it's like to lose everything. There was a long silence, then a small, strained whisper, you're really doing this. I already had. The fallout was merciless and fast. By morning his boss had called him in for an urgent meeting, by the afternoon he was suspended pending an internal review, by the end of the week, the company announced his termination. He fought, argued it was private, that I was vindictive, but the footage was objective and brutal. It spoke louder than any of his defensiveness ever could. Losing his job was only the beginning. His reputation, carefully curated for years, began to erode. Clients pulled out of projects. Colleagues who once toasted him at bars now skimmed his messages and kept walking. Friends stopped returning calls. People who'd admired his easy charm started to recall other moments, the offhand sexist jokes, the way he dismissed women in meetings, the microaggressions that had once been shrugged off as just Daniel. His world didn't collapse so much as it was revealed, layer by layer, until there was nothing left but the men behind the mask. A week after his termination, there was a knock on my door. For a beat I almost didn't answer. Then I opened it because I wanted to see him, to look him in the eye one last time. I barely recognized the version of Daniel standing there. The suit that once fit like armor was wrinkled. The practiced ease was gone, replaced by something hollow and raw. He looked smaller. Emma, he said, voice softer than I'd ever heard it. Can we talk? Talk. I echoed, folding my arms. Like we always do. You talk and I sit there and take it. He let out a breath, hands running through his hair like an apology. I messed up. Okay. I get that. But this is too much. It's too much. Too much. I tilted my head, letting the question sit between us. Too much like throwing a drink in my face in front of people. Too much like laughing while I sat there humiliated. Too much like treating me like I paused, choosing the word slowly, a prop, a punchline, less than human. His eyes flickered, hunted for an answer he could use. There was no practice charm left to deploy, no smirk to soften the edges. This isn't about revenge, I said, quietly but with iron beneath my tone. It's about accountability. You made your choices. I made mine. And now you have to live with what you became when no one was watching. He reached for something, an apology, a bargaining chip, anything. I closed the door gently, not unkindly, and let him stand on the other side of it with the consequences he had finally, irrevocably earned. I was less than for years, I said quietly, the words coming out steadier than I expected. Daniel swallowed hard, his eyes darting to the floor. I just need some time to fix things, he murmured, his voice fragile now, stripped of the arrogance that used to fill every syllable. I need your help. For a fleeting second, I almost pitied him. Almost. You always needed my help, Daniel, I said, my tone soft but unyielding. You just never wanted to admit it. He looked down, rubbing the back of his neck, a nervous habit I'd seen 1,000 times. I guess I just thought you'd always be there. I exhaled slowly. Yeah, I said quietly. So did I. Then I closed the door. This time, I didn't hesitate. Didn't look back. Didn't wonder if I was doing the right thing. The click of the latch echoed like finality, sharp, clean, and absolute. I leaned against the door for a moment, letting the silence wash over me. No more manipulation. No more guilt. No more waiting for apologies that would never come. For the first time in years, I was free. And God, I had never felt lighter. I didn't need to check up on Daniel to know what came next, the whispers started almost immediately. His fall from grace was as public as his arrogance had once been. The man who once lived for attention now found himself shunned by the same people who used to hang on his every word. He tried to find work in the same industry, but reputation spreads faster than truth ever can. Word had gotten around, no one wanted to be associated with him. He wasn't just out of a job, he was out of power. Out of the one thing that had always defined him, control. The friends who had once laughed at his jokes stopped answering his calls. The invitations dried up. His savings, what little he had left after his spending habits, were bleeding away fast. He tried to contest the divorce settlement, but with the evidence I'd collected, the video, the records, the messages, his lawyer had all but begged him to settle quietly. And he did. Because even Daniel, for all his pride, knew when he was cornered. He lost the house. He lost the respect of his peers. And eventually, he lost himself. Mia texted me once, said she'd seen him sitting alone at a bar, staring blankly into his drink. She said he looked small, defeated, insignificant. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because for the first time, I truly didn't care. My life, on the other hand, was finally beginning. The apartment I'd once seen as an escape had become a home, a space that was mine in every sense of the word. The quiet no longer felt heavy, it felt peaceful. I was building something new, something real. And as I stood by the window that evening, watching the city lights flicker below, I realized something simple but profound. I hadn't just left Daniel. I had found myself. The apartment I had moved into wasn't a stopgap anymore, it was home. A fresh start. A new chapter that belonged entirely to me. I decorated it exactly how I wanted, bright walls, warm tones, soft lighting. No more sterile gray, no more glass and steel minimalism that screamed Daniel's taste. Every corner of that space reflected me. My choices. My peace, and my business. It flourished. Without Daniel's constant criticism, without his voice in my head telling me I wasn't good enough, I finally let myself grow. I poured every ounce of my energy into it, late nights, early mornings, relentless focus. Within months, I expanded, hired new people, and saw my ideas come alive in ways I had never allowed myself to imagine before. That's when it hit me, it hadn't been the world holding me back all that time. It had been him. His doubts. His control. His need to keep me small. When I finally stepped out from under his shadow, I realized how capable I truly was. Then the messages started. Not from him, but from women. Women I didn't even know. "You're an inspiration," one message read. "I watched your story unfold, and it gave me the courage to leave my own toxic marriage." Others followed. Stories of women who had been trapped, dismissed, made to feel invisible, just like I had once been. And as I read each one, I realized something profound. My revenge had never really been about destroying Daniel. It had been about rebuilding myself. 6 months after I had closed the door in his face, I saw him again. It wasn't planned. I was at a networking event, laughing easily with a group of new business contacts when, across the room, I spotted him. Daniel. He looked smaller somehow. The sharp suit replaced with something rumpled, his tie loose, his trademark confidence dulled to a shadow. He was standing alone. No admirers. No charm. Just a man who had finally run out of people to impress. I didn't approach him, I didn't need to. But he saw me. For a moment, our eyes met. And in that instant, I saw it, regret. Not the kind that comes from losing love, but the kind that comes from finally understanding what you threw away. He hadn't just lost me. He had never truly seen me, not until it was far too late. He knew I had won, not against him, but over him. That night, I went home to my apartment, the one filled with laughter, warmth, and quiet peace. I poured a glass of wine, sat by the window, and exhaled. This time, the wine wasn't bitter with humiliation. It was rich with victory. Not revenge. Not power. Freedom. Daniel had once thought that throwing wine in my face was the final punchline to some cruel joke, the end of my story. But he was wrong. It wasn't the end. It was only the beginning.